Hello and welcome to the Beautiful Business Podcast, where today I'm joined by the amazing Blair Enns. Blair is very well known throughout the agency world, but in case you don't know, he is the founder of Win Without Pitching, offering sales training for experts. He's a huge advocate for integrity-based selling and value-based pricing, and has authored 2 books so far, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto and Pricing Creativity, both highly recommended. And he is on a mission to change the way creative services are bought and sold across the world. Now, excitingly, Blair has a 3rd book out this year, The 4 Conversations, a new model for selling expertise. And today I get to explore some of the key concepts of the book with him directly. We'll be talking about the sales conversation, the mindset we need to be able to sell well, and the importance of utilising our expert self to maximise our opportunities.
Still today, it's because of 12 years as a consultant where I really thought I had to be the subject matter expert. I was the person with the answers. And then when I pivoted the model to a training company, I realized, in a training company, the shape of the container doesn't matter, the consulting or training. Obviously, there's information you're going to impart in both of those business models, but you want to be the expert. You need to move from seeing yourself as the person with the answers to seeing yourself as the person with the questions.
Welcome to the Beautiful Business Podcast from the Wow Company. If you're searching for the right strategies, tools, and connections to ignite your thinking and elevate your business, then join us for a fortnightly dose of inspiration. Our guests range from industry-leading agencies and cutting-edge tech pioneers to motivational speakers and executives, all offering actionable insights to help you thrive in profit and purpose. So, whether you're a growing consultancy or an agency leader, this podcast is your source of knowledge and encouragement to spark meaningful change in your business and beyond. Blair, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
Oh, hi, Chloe. I'm doing well. Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure to be here.
No, honestly, so excited to have you here. You are very well known throughout the agency world, and we know a lot of your kind of achievements, and as we should. But I always say to everybody, we don't often know much about the person that is behind all of those achievements. So can you tell us something about you as a person that maybe we don't already know?
Oh,
it's a tough one, right?
that you don't already know. So about the person. So I have 4 kids. I live with my wife and business partner, and one of our kids is at home right now in a remote mountain village in British Columbia, Canada. So it's not even a town. It's a village of less than 1,000 people on the shore of a 92-mile long lake that is home to the largest strain of rainbow trout in the world. There you go.
Wow, that is incredible. Wow. Where to go and relax and get rid of your hard day's work, eh? Just down at the lake,
yes,
catching
just
some rainbow trout.
Out the door, that's where I go.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. And talk to us about Win Without Pitching. How did that come about for you and get to where it is now?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. What story do you want me to tell? It's been a while now. I launched Win Without Pitching in 2002. Primarily because I needed a way to earn a living if I wanted to live in this remote mountain village in the middle of nowhere that I had discovered 3 years earlier.
Yeah.
It was 5 years, I don't remember. But I was always scheming to try to get here. I needed to find an income source. So it was either be self-employed, which was always my goal, or buy the fly shop, the tackle shop. I would be horrible at retail. I'm not great at customer service. Any of my clients listening will attest to that. So I launched Win Without Pitching initially as a consulting practice to advise owners of independent agencies on how to do new business differently. And the value proposition is right there in the name, Win Without Pitching. In 2013, I thought I had maxed out the business model of an independent consultant, and I look back on it now and I think that's just ridiculous. I was confined by my pricing model, not the business model. But I pivoted to a training company. We've been a training company for the last 12 years. I did 12 years in agency, 12 years roughly as a consultant, 12 years as a training company. And so I'm at the place where I think, well, What's the next
Yeah.
iteration? What's the next shedding of the skin going to reveal? And I don't know, but I'm thinking about that quite a bit.
Oh, incredible. So it's actually changed so much from when you very first started then.
Yeah, in some ways it has, consulting versus training. These are really just labels. When I was a consultant, I did a lot of training. As a training company, we dabble in consulting. The difference was the pursuit of scale, and it not being about just me.
You've already authored 2 books, but today I get to talk to you about your new book, which is just so exciting. Congratulations as well that is.
Thank you. 40 months of writing. I am a horrible writer of books. It is the most painful thing that I do.
Excellent. 40 months. Wow. And who is the book for? Talk to us about that.
So Win Without Pitching, the target audience for our business for years has been the creative professional always. When I write a book, I'm writing to an independent creative professional, either a solo designer or more typically the owner of a small firm. And that's who I have in mind when I'm writing. I wrote a post recently called "The Target is Not the Market." People can find it on winwithoutpitching.com, in which I make the distinction between these two things. Instead of target market, we think of the target as the smaller thing at which you aim. So if you're a golfer, you might aim for the hole or the flag. And the market being the larger thing you would be happy to hit. So that would be the green in the golf metaphor. Aim for the tiny thing, the narrower thing, and you're more likely to hit some of the broader thing with your spray. So while we've always targeted creative professionals because that's the world that I know, there have always been what we've called outliers who've been attracted to us, those in the consulting business, financial services, accounting, financial planning, engineering, software development, software engineering, architecture, etc. It just goes on. And as the years have gone by, these outliers became a larger and larger percentage of our client base. So I knew when I set out to write this book many years ago, I had the idea of the book many years ago, but when I started writing it about 4 years ago, I deliberately thought I'm going to broaden this book out to this broader audience. So it is written for anybody who is an advisor or practitioner first and a salesperson second. So it should be relevant to all of those different business categories that I mentioned. Now, I come from the creative world, creative and marketing. So I'm always thinking of creative and marketing first, but I made sure in this book, unlike the previous 2, that to provide examples that are beyond just creative firms.
Excellent. And so that's who it's for. What is it about?
Well,
probably a really important point, isn't it?
Yeah. So the book is titled The 4 Conversations, A New Model for Selling Expertise. So that subtitle, A New Model for Selling Expertise, is what it's about. The 4 Conversations is the model. The book opens with a quote from a statistician and author named George Box, who says, "All models are wrong, some are useful." So I'm making the point that I'm not saying the way we think of selling and the sale itself is the right way. It's just the way we think about it. It's a useful model to think of the sale as a series of 4 linear and discrete conversations. So it's a framework book. It's a model. It gives away our entire model for how we at Win Without Pitching train our clients to become better sellers and pricers.
You said that you'd thought of this many, many years ago and then sat down to write it 4 years ago. What compelled you to write the book? Where did the idea come from? Because I guess, it comes from everything that you are and everything that you do. But what made you actually go, now I'm going to sit down and put this in a book now?
So my first book, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto, was published in 2010, and it's been kind of a little niche sleeper hit. It's sold, we're approaching 100,000 copies, which is a big number for a niche book, but it's not a big number for best-selling books. But it's the audience for that book just keeps growing every year. So instead of kind of spiking and going away like a lot of books do, it's sustaining. I'm very proud of that book. It is a manifesto. It is a yes you can book, and it's 24,000 words, so it's pretty short. It's an easy read. this new book, The Four Conversations, is the logical follow-up, the here's how to follow-up to the manifesto. It's 49,000 words, so it's almost exactly twice as long, more detail, filled with, again, frameworks and also principles. So it reads like the manifesto, but there's a whole lot of here's what you do, here's how to do it. So if anybody has been inspired by the manifesto, they will appreciate this book, because the 12 proclamations of the Win Without Pitching manifesto. How do you put those proclamations into practice? Well, through the model, the frameworks and the principles detailed in this book.
Excellent. And I've got to say, I've been fortunate enough to have a little sneak peek at it, and incredible. I love it so much. I've got so many questions for you.
Thank you.
Some of the themes of the book are really kind of what I've narrowed it down to today, because otherwise I feel like I'll just have you talking to me for hours and hours about it. You say, lots of things about kind of power, and I take away themes of confidence and some really distinctive human behaviors in there that are all really fascinating. So I just want to jump in with the first thing that kind of stood out to me. You said in the book, in the sale, we often feel a lesser version of our professional self. And I'm so intrigued by that concept and the lack of confidence, I guess, people experience. And I just wonder, why do you think this happens?
I think there are so many fallacies and misconceptions around what it means to be a salesperson. In fact, we're talking to an audience who cringes at the S word. We don't even use the word sales to describe what we do. We use a code. We call it new business development. And I reference that in the preface of the book, where when I was 22 years old, I was handed responsibility for sales at the ad agency I was working at. But the owner of the business never used the word sales. None of us did. We called it new business development. So there's a bit of a cringe factor over the role of selling. And it's rooted in a mistaken idea of what it means to sell. We think what selling is talking people into things, convincing them, persuading them, cajoling them, pitching to them. And I maintain that's not how we should think about selling. I maintain that, there's a whole new model for how you think about selling. But if you think of it this way, I said the book is written for the profession, or the expert first, expert, advisor, or practitioner, whose second job is selling. So you've got two jobs. As an expert, you've got two jobs. The job that you love to do, that you're very good at, that gives you confidence, is being that expert, either advisor or practitioner. You're a consultant, or you're a designer, or a marketer. So you know how an expert should show up. David Maister wrote a book called The Trusted Advisor. Right. So just that phrase, the trusted advisor, we're putting the client's interest first. It's our job to kind of lead and advise and be there as support for them and give them the unvarnished truth, to be thoughtful in the questions we pose and the answers that we give to their questions. So we know what the persona is of the expert advisor. Now, our second job of salesperson, for that job, we draw on a bunch of stereotypes. We show up, we think we have to be brilliant in the moment. We have to have the right answer to every question. We think we have to convince. It's our job to talk people into hiring us. We think we have to pitch to them, here's why you should hire us instead of hiring somebody else. So all of these thoughts that we think this is the job of the salesperson, and it's not just us, it might even be the way we've been trained. It's the others in the industry, the others in the firm, and it's also the expectations that the client is bringing to a certain extent, because we've all been sold to by bad salespeople. We know what a bad sales experience is like. So there are these two roles where in the first role, in your first job, you're very good at it, you're competent, you know how to show up. But in your second job, you think you have to adopt an entirely different persona. And my point of view and the point of view that underpins the book is one of you is good enough. Drop all the sales cliches, drop a bunch of the tactics, which might be perfectly valid for sellers of products or transactional services, but are not valid for seller expertise. And we can come back to why that is. Drop all that stuff. You already know how to behave. Use a model for selling that allows you to bring your expert persona to the fore and just behave as you would. You don't have to be somebody different. You don't have to try to be a cliched salesperson.
Yeah, I love that. And I'd love to jump straight in. You said, like, we can come back to why it's important to drop all those tactics. Tell
Because
us.
in any sale of expertise, the sale is the sample of the engagement itself. The sale is where two things happen. Number one, the roles are established. Are you going to be allowed to be the expert advisor? Are you going to be allowed to lead in the engagement? Because if you don't lead in the sale, if you don't behave like a consultant and advisor in the sale, then you will not be allowed to lead in the engagement because the roles are determined right here. So if you show up as a needy vendor trying to talk the client into hiring you, that's the role you will play in the engagement. You're ceding the high ground to the client. So you must behave as the expert. That's the first reason the roles are established. And the second thing that happens in the sale is the client tries on what it's like to work with you. So the sale is the sample of the engagement to follow. First of all, what role will you play and how good are you at that role? So if you're selling coaching, you should view the sale as a coachable moment. If you're selling consulting, you should view the sale as a consultative moment where you model what you will do for the client in the sale. So they get to try on, oh, this is what it would be like to work with you. This is your demeanor. This is your approach. This is the role you'll play. This is the role I'll play. So you think of how do you want to be seen in your engagements, then you know what that looks like. That's how you should behave in the sale, which seems so perfectly logical, just like Be Yourself. The title of the book could have been called Be Yourself.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. Perfectly logical.
Maybe the book should have been a tweet.
Oh, let's not go there. Absolutely not. 40 months for a tweet?
Yeah,
no.
For a tweet.
Yeah, it does. It does seem perfectly logical, but much easier said than done, right? For loads of people, for all the reasons that you said. Like, it's a really difficult state to sit in for a lot of people. What are the consequences, though, of not establishing this expert self right at the beginning?
Yeah, so you set up a poor quality engagement. So the first thing that happens is your odds of winning go down because you're behaving like a vendor, not like the expert. Your second thing that's likely to happen is you drive your cost to sale up. So you think of it, when a buyer and seller come together to discuss whether or not it makes sense to do business together, there are costs to be borne. And typically, the party with the least amount of power in the relationship bears the most of the costs. So if you're seen as a needy vendor, one in the sea of many, they're considering 4 or 5 others just like you, then any costs like travel or research, et cetera, are going to be imposed on you because the client has the power in the relationship. But as soon as you're seen as distinct, and so I make the distinction between like being seen as a vendor or the expert, and that's a nice, helpful generalization. The idea that you will be seen in the sale. If you're not seen as the expert, you will be seen as a vendor. So if you're seen as a vendor, you'll get cost imposed on you. Your likelihood of winning will go down. Your likelihood of commanding a price premium goes down. And the likelihood of you having an impactful engagement goes down. Because if you're not leading in the sale, you won't be allowed to lead in the engagement. The client will hire you. Throughout the selection process, the client will say, this is our problem, self-diagnosed. This is what we want, self-prescribed. Here are the specs. Here are the detailed specifications. Give us a price. Now you're in vendor mode. If you respond to that, you are in vendor mode. The likelihood, so all of these things are going to happen. Your odds of winning are going to go down. Your costs are going to go up. And the likelihood that you're going to have a meaningful engagement where you create a lot of value for the client and you capture a lot of value and you capture a lot of that value for yourself in the form of high fees goes down.
If you don't establish that expert self right at the beginning, I hear what you're saying. You turn into just another vendor, right? You're not the expert. You're just another vendor. And you talk about this a little bit in the book, but I'd love for you to kind of talk about it with us now. Is it still an option to turn into the expert self if you've been picked as a vendor? You know, if that's how the the sale's gone, where they've picked you, you're seen as a vendor, and you turn up. How can you flip it into being an expert self once you're already there?
Well, agencies sure hope so, right? Because agencies give all their power away in the sale, in the pitch. They adopt the right persona, the persona of the expert. But everybody knows it's a sham. I've been that person at the front of the room, giving all my power away. Here's a strategy. It's clear you can tell by my bleary eyes that I was up all night preparing this deck. Here's me recap. Here's my slide on why you should hire us, etc. It's giving all of my power away. So even if they hire us, everybody knows who's calling the shots. Everybody knows who's setting price, etc. I'm at the whim of the client because I'm giving my power away for free. So the book is called The Four Conversations, and the idea is these conversations, one follows the other. In the first conversation, we won't do a deep dive on all of them. The first one's called the probative conversation, and it's the most different from the others because it's the conversation that happens without you present. I'll come back to that. The objective of the probative conversation, every conversation has an objective, what you're trying to accomplish, and it has a framework for navigating to that objective or a set of frameworks. And then there are principles that you embody as you're using the framework to navigate to a conversation's objectives. The objective of the probative conversation is to prove your expertise to the client and then move in their mind from that position of a vendor to the position of the expert. That's the goal of the probative conversation, to move from being seen as one in a sea of many, one of many possible vendors, to being seen as the one, the expert. And when you can accomplish that, again, I said the probative conversation is different because it happens without you present. It happens through your agents, through effectively your reputation preceding you, your reputation in the market. That's typically through the work that you put out into the market, the actual work or the content, the writing, the insight about the work, and through what your clients are saying to your prospective clients through your referrers. So that's how we accomplish the objective of the probative conversation. There's a lot wrapped up in it. Again, it's quite different. It's how do you build reputation in the marketplace so that when the inbound inquiry comes to you, you are already seen as the expert instead of a vendor. Now, your question is basically, well, if you can't accomplish the goal of the probative conversation, to move from being seen as the vendor to being seen as the expert, what happens then? Well, in the subsequent conversation, the qualifying conversation, in addition to pursuing the objective, entirely different objective in that conversation, you're still looking for that flip to happen. The flip is the name we give to the moment in time when you move from vendor to expert. If it doesn't happen there, it has to happen in the value conversation. If it doesn't happen in the value conversation, it has to happen in the closing conversation. If it doesn't happen the later it happens, the more expensive the sale is likely to be. You can still win the business without the flip having happened, without you accomplishing the objective of the probative conversation. You can win the business from the vendor position, but you will have incurred higher costs, you will have driven your price down, and you will have decreased your ability to have an impactful engagement, to truly make a difference to the client, and then to reap the financial rewards of that difference.
I definitely want to come back to the flip because that is, such an exciting part. When I was reading it, that I've got lots of questions about as well. But in your experience, what do you think are the biggest stoppers for people sticking with their expert self? Is it a lack of confidence? Like, what is it? What do you think it is that just stops them from being like, no, I'm happy to play the expert here?
Seems like a question I should have contemplated a lot, and it's a good question. And the answer is I haven't. But as you're asking the question, the answer comes to me. It's because I'm placing myself in that role. I've made all the mistakes myself. I know what it's like to sell a few different ways. Mm-hmm. What's stopping people is knowing what else to do. So when I was handed business development responsibility at the age of 22, there was no training. Like, agencies are not good at training, certainly on the new business front. right? Or even the account management front. So there's no training. What's stopping people? Selling is one of those things where we have all been on the buying side of so many different sales experiences. We think we know what it is and we think we know how to do it. But this book I'm asking you to forget all that stuff and use a model, which is a collection of frameworks. So it's not scripts. It's not here's exactly what to say. Here's exactly what to do in this moment. Think of it as 4 conversations. Even though it's rarely 4 conversations, these conversations often blend into each other. I'm not saying break up the sale longer than is necessary. I'm saying it can be helpful to you to think of it as 4 conversations. At any point in the sale, you stop and ask yourself, wait a minute, what conversation is this? Oh, it's the value conversation. What's my objective? My objective is to determine the value that we might help the client create and the share of value that we might command in the form of fees. So I'm basically determining to what extent we can help the client and then what they might pay us. That's the value conversation. Okay, how do I navigate to that objective? I use the value conversation framework. So that's it. The answer to what's stopping people is they don't know what else to do. This book is the answer to the question, here's what you do. Here's how you sell like an expert.
Great. And like I say, I want to come back to the flip, the conversation of the flip. But you've mentioned it there. It's when you move from, kind of just being another vendor to being the actual expert. And you even talk about it in the book, it might be a little look or just a shift. You can feel this kind of shift that happens. I wonder, when I was reading it, I was like, that makes total sense. Yeah, I've experienced that before. And, not really thought of it as the moment, but actually, yeah, you're looking for that moment, right? You're looking for the moment where they go, you get it. You know what I need. You know what we need to be better. When it comes to the flip, are there any chances that you might not notice it? Do you find that people sometimes can just keep their cards a bit close to their chest and you don't even notice that they've actually switched into seeing you as the expert?
Well, ideally, the flip happens in the probative conversation, so it happens without you present. It happens before there's a direct person-to-person interaction. It's either they're reading your content or listening to your podcast or watching your YouTube videos, or they've read your book or your blog post, or one of your clients they're just sick of listening to one of your best clients go on effusively about how great you are. And so that shift happens before you interact with them. And you're talking about the part of the book where I make the point that, hey, we all know what the flip looks like because we've seen it happen in front of our very eyes. So we walk into a sale, a new business meeting, and the client's body language is closed. Their note-taking device is closed. If there's more than one of them, they might even be ignoring you. There are these little power play dynamics that signal to you, we are the prize to be won. You'll be lucky if you get to win us. And so these are the power dynamics of you're seen as a vendor. You're seen as easily replaceable. After this meeting, there are 3 others just like you that we're going to meet with. You're not that different. And then the meeting begins, and at some point you say something brilliant. It might be an insightful observation or a smart question. And something happens in the conversation to change the power dynamics, to cause the power dynamics to just flip. And that's why we call it the flip. And we all recognize it, as you pointed out. It's like there's a look in their eyes. There's the way they look at each other. There's the way their body language opens up. They open up their note-taking devices. They start to lean forward instead of leaning back. They're looking at you differently. They're asking more questions rather than making more statements. They're writing down your answers. If you've been in business long enough, you have experienced that moment. You think, oh yeah, okay, this is, and if you're wired like I am with a high need for authority and respect, you would think, okay, now everything is right in the world. This is the way it should be. That's you in the power position. That's you being seen as the expert. Your expertise is recognized and valued. These are the dynamics that you want to preserve in the engagement in itself. Therefore, you need to preserve these dynamics through the rest of the sale. And again, if the flip has not already happened and the inbound inquiry does not come to you with that kind of reverence or recognition of your expertise, then you're looking for the flip to happen in the subsequent conversations, in addition to the other objective that you're trying to accomplish.
Excellent. Thanks for explaining that. I think, it was just, there's something quite exciting about that, isn't there? About that.
It's
that
fun
that
because you read the description or you listen to us talking about it and you think, oh yeah, I know that moment. That is a wonderful moment. I want you to get addicted to that moment and realize that things have fundamentally changed. Now I need a framework to finish the sale to make sure that I don't give up this super valuable high ground.
Absolutely. The last couple of years in the agency world has been really tough, right?
Yeah.
We hear that across the board. There are multiple things that come into play. The biggest one I'm hearing at the moment is about delayed decisions. New business has been difficult. Just constant battles for everyone in the agency world. So I wonder how this intertwines with these frameworks and this conversation and that confidence that we're talking about, and really the mindset that you have to go into these conversations and still maintain that expert self rather than falling into what you said at the beginning, we don't really know how to do it any other way. So falling into that trap of going, actually, I'm going to go back into kind of vendor mode, as it were. Have you got any advice for anyone listening about how they can work with all of these difficulties and still maintain their expert self?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is universal. I think your audience is largely in the UK, but it's a global phenomenon. It's across all kinds of industries. I think creative firms are hit hard, particularly right now. What's going on is your pipelines have turned to concrete, like nothing is moving. Clients are they're not saying no. They're just saying, well, we're just waiting on our clients. We're just waiting for something to happen. And so everybody's just waiting. Everybody's pipeline is basically stuck or moving very slowly. So what's the advice in the book that's going to help you in this moment? I think if you want to get better at selling, 3 words: no sunk costs. So think about that from an agency owner point of view. What are your sunk costs in the sale? When you go into pitch mode, the client invites you, either tells you explicitly or implies that it's in your best interest, to start giving your thinking away for free. So do all this research to begin to solve the problem as proof of your ability to solve the problem. Here you're giving your power away for free, and you're sinking cost after cost. There's actually the hard cost of whatever you're spending on travel and production. But there's the soft cost, it's of time, which is really the opportunity cost of whatever else you could be doing. But probably the biggest cost is your emotional cost. You're so emotionally invested. You've put so much into this. You are so emotionally invested. You can't possibly show up in the sale as the expert. You're behaving like the needy vendor because you need this bad. And when the external conditions, like the marketplace, like everybody's pipeline turning to concrete, start to rear their ugly heads, start to turn poor, there's even more pressure. So again, if we get back to the premise, show up like the expert, not like the needy vendor. You don't have to adopt the salesperson persona. You don't have to do the needless checking in of, I'm not saying don't check in on your opportunities and your prospective clients. Absolutely you should. But the needless fake smile on your face, hey, so they can hear it in your voice, hey, just checking in on that proposal, how's it going? All of these subtle things that communicate neediness to the client. So no sunk costs, don't overinvest emotionally. Don't put yourself in the position where you cannot be the trusted advisor in the sale. Like, what would a trusted advisor do so we'll talk about a sale, but let's just think about it as an engagement. You have a client, you're an advisor to this client, and they have a decision they have to make. And it's a big decision, and it involves money, it involves a lot of time and attention on their part, and it involves career risk. Should you be coercing them into making a decision if they're stuck? Is that your job to talk them into it? No. What's your job? Your job is to say, hey, I know this is a difficult moment right now. I know you've got a lot of things to weigh. Would it be helpful to you if we had a conversation about what's the best way to proceed? Or would it be helpful to you is there something that I can do for you to make taking an initial step easier. What would a trusted advisor do? They would not try to talk that person into, they would not start throwing discounts or added incentives. They would say, hey, I see you're in a difficult position. I see this is a difficult decision. Do you want to have a conversation? Can we talk about, maybe I can help you here. And if you've got all these sunk costs and the client sees them, if you are heavily invested in them saying yes to your proposal, then you've given up that high ground of the expert advisor in the moment. You will not be invited in to help make the decision on whether or not or how to hire your firm.
Yeah, and that falls right into what you mentioned in the book about the power, right? You have a little formula in there for power and about kind of being desired versus desiring the work with the client as well, and actually how that power can shift really easily. And I think, when you were just talking about that there, about instead of the fake smile and the constant check-ins, actually just saying, how can I help you? Like, you're still maintaining that expertise there, not right? And that power, I guess, from the formula.
The formula you're referencing is P equals DB over D, which stands P for power. Your power in the sale is a function of your desirability, DB, being greater than your own desire, D. So what that means is just be aware of the power dynamics in the sale. If you are communicating that you need the deal more than the client needs you, you're giving your power away. And there's more that follows on from that, but that's my answer to the question, how do you win without pitching in the fewest words possible? I got it down to just those, 5 letters in a formula. We put it on coffee mugs, P equals DB over D, just to remind you of beware of the power dynamics in the relationship. Are you giving your power away by being too desirous of the client? Are you communicating desire for the engagement that is greater than the client's desire for you?
That, I guess, just pushes you back into needy vendor, right? That's the whole point of that.
Yeah, and you think about it, when I think about my agency career, I was effectively taught to give all of my power away in the sale, because it was as soon as somebody expressed, just think of the dating metaphor, which a lot of people use when thinking about selling. Somebody shows some interest and you just light up and start gushing and start doing all kinds of things for them. What does that do? What signal does that send?
Desperation.
Yeah. I actually think parenting is a better metaphor for selling than dating. I think somebody's got to be the adult in this relationship. I guess that somebody is me, because your clients aren't necessarily on their best behavior in a sale, your prospective clients. And I used to work with car dealers when I did retail advertising for a few years, car dealer groups. They had a saying that buyers are liars. So we think of car salespeople as dishonest, but their defense mechanism was, they said, well, buyers are coming in here lying. So they're saying the buyers are lying to us, so we're going to use our own techniques. So neither side trusts the other. They're both on poor behavior. There's very little like open, honest conversation. Here's what I'm thinking. Everybody's guarded. Everybody's using gimmicks and techniques. You want to dismantle all of that.
Definitely. That's a great analogy. And you also talk, just sort of going off piece a little bit, you talk about the importance of niching. And I just wonder what advice you'd offer to an agency owner that is kind of struggling to niche, because I guess what I notice more than anything when I talk to agency owners is that they maybe perhaps think that they're niched and maybe aren't. Like, they think that because they're, in their mind, they're aiming it at a certain market, that they are actually niched, and actually that isn't the entirety of being niched. And then the other thing is just the fear of niching, in case they're shutting all the doors to a whole load of work out there, and especially in these difficult times. So have you got any advice that you could offer?
Well, you're trying to occupy the expert position in the sale as opposed to the vendor position. Experts, so what is expertise? I mean, I offer a definition in the book. It's not kind of the dictionary definition, but it's the one that kind of serves the purpose of the book. I explain expertise is the knowing of what to do or how to do it that remains valuable even when unbundled from the doing. So when you think of expertise, expertise is really relative. You can really only be more expert or less expert than somebody else. How do you be seen as an expert? But how do you be seen as more expert than somebody else? Well, the obvious answer, the 85% of the answer is narrow your focus, niche down. Everybody recognizes that experts are specialists. Now, you don't have to niche. Your requirement to niche is really a function of a few different things. And the biggest one is your own sales ability as an individual in a small agency. And as an organization, as the organization grows larger, it's the ability spread across the organization. So if you have a great culture of people who are great at soliciting referrals, for whatever reason, have extensive networks, know how to sell, whatever it is, you can get away with a broader value proposition. But most agencies are owned by marketers. Some are owned by creative people. They're not natural salespeople. I mean, we know this because they don't use the word sales. If I send an email to my list of 30,000 people with the S word in the subject line, the open rate plummets. So I don't put it in this subject line. I put it in the body of the email. I trick them. So there's no requirement for you to absolutely niche down, but that's if you're great at selling. If you're not great at selling, you want to build a business where you can drive new leads, you need to niche. And, I talk about this in my first book, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto, this idea that you're listening to me saying, pick a specialism. And it's like you're standing in a room full of doors. You're looking at all the doors. And being a highly creative person, a creative problem solver, you're curious. You want to know what's behind every door. You want to frame your business that allows you to walk through every door. And you think if you pick one, I'm saying pick a door, walk through it. And you think if you walk through that door, what you're going to see is boredom. You're going to just a gray, empty room where you are going to die a death of boredom. But that's not what's behind the door. What's behind the door is more doors, just more. The niches, it's like Narnia is the best metaphor. You walk in through the closet and there's a whole world in the niche. And you realize from outside the door, you think, oh, I'm going to die a death of boredom. It's so small, it's so boring, it's so rote, it's so repetitive. And then you walk through the door and a whole world opens up and you realize you can't possibly live long enough to learn everything that you want to learn about this tiny little niche. So it's natural for entrepreneurs, and it's even more natural for creative people, because creativity is the ability to see. So you're constantly looking for a problem to which you can bring a novel perspective. You are constantly searching for the problem that you have not previously solved. That is in your nature because it is your superpower. But that superpower is more valuable when you concentrate it on a niche and you start to see patterns.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that's really helpful to hear. And then when it comes to another kind of key message, you talk about the importance of listening. As a vendor, as a salesperson, as an expert, the importance of listening over presenting or convincing. Can you talk to us a bit about how that falls into the power as well of your formula, and also just what that helps to create?
Yeah, it's one of the principles of the book it's the only principle in the book that is directly taken from the Win Without Pitching Manifesto, which is conversations instead of presentations. That's one of the proclamations in the manifesto. So the book is called The 4 Conversations, and I really mean it. It is 4 conversations. Now, the first one is the most different one. It's the one where the conversation happens through your agents of thought leadership and referrers. And then there are 3 direct human-to-human conversations. And they really are conversations. Even the closing conversation where you are sharing a proposal, say presenting a proposal, you don't go into presentation mode. You stay in conversation mode. And so a good conversationalist is a good listener. when we go into sales mode, needy vendor mode, we adopt the salesperson persona. We're going into persuasion mode. We are transmitting and not receiving, especially when we start presenting. So no presentations, keep it conversational. You want to create the dynamics where both parties are honest with each other. So you won't be honest with the client once you're over-invested in the sale. Time, money, and emotions. You will quit being honest. You will start to coerce the client. So don't over-invest in the sale. And how do you do that? You just follow the frameworks in the book. They will keep you from over-investing in the sale. And when you get to the closing conversation, you're sharing a proposal. The last thing you want is what you typically see today in such a situation. The client sitting there going, yeah, this is great. We'll get back to you. Well, do you have any questions? No questions. Yeah, I have a lot of questions. I'm just not going to ask them. I'm not going to put them to you because I know what your answer is going to be. Oh, just hire us. Here's why you should hire us. You want to create the dynamics where it's like, okay, let's talk about what I've put in front of you. And the client is very honest about, well, I don't understand option B. Option C is kind of compelling to me. I'm alluding to the fact that there should be options in your proposal. But you want to be in that closing conversation. It's not a presentation. You're not suddenly going into pitch mode that you've avoided throughout the earlier arc of the sale. You're keeping it conversational. You're not trying to talk. You're being that trusted advisor who's trying to facilitate a discussion. And those are the dynamics you want to keep largely throughout. In the beginning, in the qualifying conversation, you're vetting. So there's some there's some ruthlessness. There's some clinical demeanor that happens. But once you decide that, okay, this is a good one, this is worth spending time on, you move to the value conversation and the dynamics change. Now you are a trusted advisor. You are an excellent conversationalist. You're the person with the questions, not the person with the answers. And that dynamic should largely remain throughout. And in the closing conversation, you will be posed questions and you want to answer them. But in addition to preserving the high ground of the expert, you're trying to preserve these other conditions, one of which is it remains an open and honest two-way conversation where both parties are saying what's on their mind. They're asking the questions that they're thinking, and they're answering the questions put to them honestly. Seems so logical, right? It's like, That's why it's like parenting. It's like, come on, Chloe, we need to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fine. Okay, fine.
Super powerful. But I wonder, how long did it take 22-year-old Blair, who was chucked into that sales position, to realize that actually the power of listening, do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I still today, it's because of 12 years as a consultant where I really thought I had to be, I was the subject matter expert. I was the person with the answers. And then when I pivoted the model to a training company, I realized, in a training company, it's not just that was the impetus for it, but it's not the shape of the container doesn't matter, the consulting or training. Obviously, there's information you're going to impart in both of those business models, but you want to be the expert. You need to move from seeing yourself as the person with the answers to seeing yourself as the person with the questions. And yeah, you will have to answer some questions, but you need to see yourself as the person with the questions. How long did it take me? I'm still working on that.
Thanks for your honesty. Blair, what are you hoping that this book will achieve?
I'm hoping that it changes the way expertise is sold around the world.
Incredible.
I'm hoping that people who are salespeople second, who don't really like the role, who think they're not very good at it, who think it's not a noble role, who don't have a lot of success in it, who struggle with it, who feel uncomfortable in it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope all of that can just fall away. And I hope that they can learn to be good at selling. I hope they can understand what it means to sell, and it's more noble than talking people into things. I hope they can learn to be good at it. I hope that some of them fall in love with it.
Amazing. Well, I can tell you this, having read the book myself, it made me want to get up and have a sales conversation, which is not something you hear every day, is it? It made me want to just put it down and go and do that, but then not put it down in case I miss, a vital part that will be really, really helpful. So I can definitely vouch from what I've read that it's a great, great read, and all the listeners go and get it now, because it is so helpful. What is coming up for you in the future then, Blair? What are you up to?
A year of traveling the world, speaking in support of the book. We also have a whole new training platform, the Win Without Pitching Academy, that we've been building for quite a while, and that's about to launch soon too. So those two things, getting the book out into the world, speaking in support of the book, launching our new training academy, that's going to keep me busy for a while.
I was going to say, just a quiet year coming up for you then.
Yeah.
Excellent. And we ask everyone on the podcast, Blair, and I can't wait to get your take on this. What does beautiful business mean to you?
That's a good question, and my answer would change over time, depending on what I'm facing in the business. Obviously, I think a beautiful business means to me that the business is serving me as opposed to holding me hostage. That's what beautiful business means to me. And I think there are some businesses where the owners are in service to the business, and we want that happen. We didn't want Apple to serve Steve Jobs. We wanted Steve Jobs to serve Apple. Elon Musk is a slave to Tesla, whether he likes it or not. He's that's just the reality. And for people who are building scaled businesses, massive scale, who really want to change the world on a massive scale like that, that is the trade that they make. You see it in football managers, you see it in other big jobs where it's like, the rest of my life is subservient to kind of this role or the business. But as an entrepreneur, as an owner of a smaller business, that's not why we got into this. We got into it for the freedom. So beautiful business is, the business is serving you. It's like riding a horse. You're in control. I don't ride horses. You're in control. You're going to where you want to go, a beautiful trout stream with your family, whatever the scenario is, as opposed to being on a bucking bronco that is exhausting you and you think might kill you. That's what beautiful business is to me, that horseback ride to a trout stream.
What a great image. And I think that's a great way to end today's talk. Thanks so much, Blair. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And I can't wait to hear about your travels over the next year and to see how well this book does for you.
Thanks, Chloe. I really enjoyed our talk.
Thank you for listening to the Beautiful Business Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please remember to subscribe and leave us a review. For more advice and practical tips on what it's really like to build a beautiful business, visit our content hub at wowco.uk/hub or check out the link in the show notes.